Fellow tennis nerds, I hope you're well. I hope Nikola is well. You know him by now, Intuitive Tennis. He's been on the podcast. He usually corrects me, so I'm not going to say how many times, but it's been a bunch of times. And today we're going to talk about the French Open that just finished. What an amazing way to finish that event with the Alcaraz Sinner Tennis Fest, I would call it. It was amazing for tennis and marketing. We're also going to talk about his racket journey because he's been doing what I do most of the day, test rackets for a while, and it's been a frustrating thing for him and also an eye-opening thing in some ways, so we're going to discuss that and maybe get into some other topics as well. But I always start with asking the guests how they are. So how are you, man?
I'm doing good. Roland Garros was exciting, a lot of great matches, and like the final match was like one of the best of all time. So I had a blast watching Roland Garros, covering it, and I'm still kind of thinking about it, even though it's Tuesday. It's still fresh in my mind. I think just from what I'm seeing online, it's still strongly in the news. You know how it goes, like news dominate what happened on a Sunday, Monday, and then it slowly dies off as the week continues. And by the end of the week after a slam, people kind of already move on. But I think this one will be remembered for a while. And coverage of that match today is as strong as it was yesterday. So, like I said, one to remember for the ages, and it was a blast watching it. But the whole tournament I thought was so exciting. You know, so many different stories. One of the best Grand Slams I've seen in a long time, and it was fun covering it.
Yeah, I agree. I was there for a few days, and I love the atmosphere. The atmosphere was great. The French crowd, they were pumped. I saw Mpetshi Pericard win his first match, among other matches, right? And it's like the atmosphere watching a French player in Suzanne Lenglen or at Philippe
Yes,
Chatrier is, yeah, it's good for tennis. I think marketing is, I mean, I know the players, it's tough for them, the French crowd and the Italian crowd, and some tennis crowds can be rough, but as a spectator, tennis needs a bit of life, and this tournament had a lot of life. I think like a lot of good matches. We got the dream final, some surprises like Boisson, you know, in the women's side. It's just a perfect Grand Slam. I think it was one of the best Grand Slams we've had in a while, you know, that had the drama all the way until the end, you know, because that's
I
sometimes
agree.
we're out of the drama. We know who's going to win a little bit, and there's been nothing super exciting going on until like the second week. But this time it was excitement all around.
I agree 100%. And of course, you know, I feel so bad for Yannick. And if he holds serve in that third set, right, he was up 2 sets to love. Even if he holds serve at 5-3 in a second, so it's 6-4, 6-4, 6-3, and he wins the third set 6-3 with one break, which is plausible that that would have happened. It looked like that was going to happen, but Carlos such a fighter, and Yannick, you know, didn't take advantage of his opportunities in this match for sure. But let's say this match straight set win for Yannick, like it was in Australia against Zverev, like it was U.S. Open against Fritz, then it's a little different story, you know. So this is exactly what makes tennis so fun when we have these 5-hour battles when it goes to the finish line. And I think Carlos was a little bit lucky, but we were also lucky to see this match because, like I said, it could have easily been 3-0 for Sinner or 3-1. You know, of course, he had those match points in the fourth. Love 45-3. It was serving for the 5-4. So, yeah, lucky to have witnessed this. Could have easily gone the other way, right?
Yeah, three set would have been a bit of a letdown. Like, I mean, the only thing that would have happened then is like, okay, Sinner didn't lose a set even against Carlitos. Like, I mean, what an amazing tournament by Sinner. Will he now win all the slams? I think that was one of the few questions I saw on social media.
That's
It's
right.
like, when Sinner was 2 sets up, like, this guy is just on fire. He just dominated the
That's
whole
right.
tournament, even beat Novak, who played great
That's right.
tennis in 3 sets. But then, you know, Carlitos will never give up. So I was actually playing tennis at the time. I watched because there was
Mm-hmm.
a screen in the back of the court. So I could go in between like serves and when we had breaks, I was just watching, you know, and there were people
Yeah.
screaming. So I would get an idea as there were people on the Italian side and Spanish side. So it's kind of
Yeah.
you were living it while you were playing. It was quite fun.
Sure. Yeah. Like I said, I mean, it's, you know, Carlitos is an incredible fighter, right? You know, he's done it many times, like, flipping these matches around, and he's so clutch and everything. But still, even the players will tell you that to come back from something like this does require incredible talent and incredible mental strength, because a lot of players will resign when they're down like that, right? It's very tough mentally to come back. 5-3 love 43 match points. Tough, and of course the opponent has all the confidence in the world, right? Especially love 40 versus 30-40, for example, where there's a lot more pressure. Love 40, you have a little bit of a cushion there. You can be more aggressive. So it's a humongous disadvantage. And to have the belief to be able to win, because I listened to the Juan Carlos Ferrero press conference afterwards, and he was amazed how much belief Alcaraz had, even at that point in the match. Positive body language, going with the racket like this towards him after he got that first point. So incredible mental strength from Carlos to believe that he can still flip that match around. It's a lot easier said than done in that moment. But on top of all that, I do think a little bit of luck is also required, right? A little bit of luck is required, because that return at 15-40, Sinner could have made it. It was a second serve. And then, of course, the 30-40 point, Sinner had a forehand from the middle of the court. He could have hit a winner on that, and Carlitos would have been toast. So, in tennis, people don't always talk about this, but a little bit of luck is involved,
Yeah, you make your own luck by fighting. Like if you give up, you never get any luck. So I think it's both dual, right? Some of it reminded me a little bit of when Novak beat Roger, I think twice from like match points down. When at least very close to match point down. I mean, Wimbledon is the famous one, 2019, but there's also U.S. Open, I think 2015 or something, where everybody was like, "Oh, Roger's winning another one," and then he like slaps 2 return winners, and then suddenly he's back in the match and he fights it out. So it was like this. It's always that minor momentum shift, and then everything changes, and it's. But I also got to give kudos to Sinner, because you could have easily been like very demotivated when he was up 2 sets to love, so close to winning the match in straights, and then chances again 4th, and then he starts 5th, and he goes down a break. But he still breaks back. That was pretty impressive to me, because I thought like it's very easy to be like, okay, this match is slipping, but he was hanging in there.
Yeah, both of them incredibly strong mentally, both of them incredible fighters. And what you said before, I think it all evens out at the end. Like we see that match from Djokovic where he hit that famous forehand return. I think that one came at 15-40, right?
Yeah.
Match point Federer on Federer, so 15-40. He, some people would say that was a tank return, but I don't think so. But it was a very low percentage return. So he made that one. But if you take a look at other matches where he hit a return like that, match point down, he lost, but nobody talks about that. So I think at the end of the day, it kind of evens out. And in these specific scenarios, when it comes down to 1 point, like I said, luck is involved a little bit. I mean, take a look at the Sabalenka Goff match. Goff, incredible performance. I was so happy for her. I got emotional after she won. I was tearing up. And can you imagine if Sabalenka ended up breaking in that game, which she had a break point. And on the first match point for Goff, Sabalenka ripped the forehand return that hit the line, the baseline. And that's incredibly unlucky, but it turned in Coco's way somehow, and she still ended up holding. So again, in those circumstances, when it's a point or a few points here and there, nobody talks about it, but luck is for sure a factor. But what you said, of course, if you resign mentally when it's 2 sets to 1, 5-3, 40 love down, if you mentally resigned, even luck won't help you. You got to put yourself in a position to be competitive in those points. So it goes a little bit deeper than that for sure.
Yeah, well done, Coco. I was kind of sure that Sabalenka was going to win. My predictions before the tournament was Sabalenka and Alcaraz, so almost got it right. It wasn't the most daring predictions you ever saw.
Did you have Coco in the final?
No. I think I had Iga in the final, but that's
no,
didn't
but
really work out in the draw.
Iga was on the top. Who'd you have on the bottom in the final?
Who did I have in the final? I don't remember actually.
Probably
Who did you have in the final? No, not Bados. No Bados in the final. Was
That's her favorite.
Rybakina was in that side,
No, no,
or
she was on top. She was on top.
was it top?
Rybakina
Okay.
lost to Iga in the fourth. The
Yeah, I didn't.
top half was stacked,
Uh,
obviously, like with
yeah.
Iga being up there. I had Iga winning the whole thing
Okay.
against Coco in the final, and I did have Alcaraz beating Sinner. I did
Very
have
good.
that. I missed the I had Runa instead of Musetti, and I had Andreeva instead of Boisson.
Yeah. Well,
It's
me
okay.
too.
Who could have guessed Boisson, right?
Yeah,
So
that's crazy.
I did good, but I mean, like, it doesn't take a lot of skill to predict, Alcaraz, Sinner, and Djokovic, right? That doesn't take a lot of skill. But I, compared to other draws, I didn't do that well this year. Like, a tad worse than the Australian Open. It's very difficult to predict the early rounds. There were quite a few upsets, actually. Like, who would have thought that Fritz goes out to Altmaier and stuff like that? So there
Yeah.
were a lot of there were a lot of shockers. Bublik surprised a lot of people, taking out Demonor in the second round. So it was a really fun tournament. So many different things happened that nobody expected.
Yeah, that's what I like about this tournament, but also like I think that makes a good slam when you actually have the upsets. Like some years, and especially Wimbledon, maybe like many seeds go just blazing through the draw, and that's
Yeah,
quite boring. But this one, like I never saw Bublik reach quarterfinals, like not in my
right.
life, and
It was a
golf,
special.
yes, possible final, like she is good, and also like conditions were pretty good, like pretty
She's
semi-cold
good
in
on clay.
Paris. Yeah,
She's a good clay quarter, Coco. Very
she
good.
moves really well actually, and that's her main, I think, skill, and she fights hard, so that's what you need, and that's what helped her
She's
in the end,
also
right?
she's also very versatile. She has quite a big repertoire of strokes.
Yep.
She can slice the forehand, slice the backhand, good feel. She can come to the net. She can hit lobs. Forehand, very, very like tricky to play actually. Especially when she's confident on the forehand side. It's a tough ball to play on clay. So Coco won junior Roland Garros, and now she won the real Roland Garros. She was in all those finals on clay before. She is one of the best in the world on clay. Definitely top three on clay, maybe top two. I'd still put Iga on top, and Sabalenka a little bit dependent on the conditions, right? Like
Mm,
Madrid, Sabalenka is so dangerous because it's
yeah.
faster, and then if the conditions are fast in Rome or Roland Garros, she can win, right? But yeah, that's the top three on clay for sure. And Coco is an incredible player, and I was so happy to see her win. That was incredible.
Yeah, well deserved. I think she was the right winner there, and also kind of like I think it's important. I look at tennis big picture kind of, and I like storylines that make tennis grow in key markets or make it more exciting. And I think Coco is a
Yeah,
good ambassador for tennis, and I think it's important that American players win because of, US is a important place for the sport, and we don't have male Grand Slam winners since quite a while, but we do have female winners in Coco and the obviously Williams sisters. So I think it's important to continue, and now we also Keys, of course, like in the beginning of the year. So US female tennis doing really well. I mean US male tennis as well, but no real GS winners in a while.
yeah. I've had a series of videos going back to like 2020 or maybe even 2019. The series is called "What Happened to American Tennis," and the thumbnail always features a pickleball court.
Yeah, I know. I've seen those videos.
Um, there's been four of them or five. And in each one of them, I said that the women are number one in the world based on how many players they have in the top 100. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And number two is usually either Russia or Czech Republic, kind of swaps between, or Czechia it's called now, but it swaps between those two. And yeah, I agree. While the men have struggled to have players at the very, very top of the game, on the women's side, it's a completely opposite thing. And I think there are reasons for that. I think um, women's sports are very encouraged in the United States compared to Europe. I know that it's changing in Europe too, and it's not as it was when I lived in Europe. Let's see, how many years ago was that? Man, probably close to 30 years ago now. It's crazy. But anyway, when you look at the way high school sports are set up, or of course the NCAA, and especially because of Title IX, um, where in some colleges you have women's volleyball, women's soccer, and you don't have the male versions of those sports to even out, you know, the amount of scholarships and so forth, because there's no female football, and football takes away so many scholarships. So to make it more fair, a lot of colleges will not have men's soccer, men's volleyball, but they have the women's version. And, you know, females are not only encouraged to do sports, but there's many opportunities to do sports here, compared to some other countries where it used to be a little bit more tricky. And from what I've heard, you know, in the Eastern European countries, that's where, you know, females are also encouraged to do a lot of sports. And so it's interesting that it's the United States and Eastern Europe that are dominating, like utterly dominating female tennis. It's not even close. When you look at the amount of players from, again, Czechia, Russia, and United States, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's at least 50% of the top 100 from just those three countries. And there are reasons for that. It's not by accident.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. I'm talking about Coco, and I wanted to hear your opinion. You're an opinionated guy. Like the ceremony, like and the press conference. Sabalenka was a little bit salty there. I mean, it happens that you're salty. I wasn't a huge fan of her saying like, oh, if Iga was in the final, she would have beaten Coco. I think this is too salty. Like you can be salty in one way, but what do you think of that?
You know, I've heard hundreds of those trophy speeches, and that one just hit me the wrong way right away, right? Like I just felt there was something wrong with it. And then she made it a lot worse in the post-match press conference. You just can't say that, because when you say that you played the worst tennis of your life, and it was 6-4 in the third, where, you know, you won the first set, you saying you played the worst tennis of your life, the worst final I've ever played, and so on and so forth. What the implication is there that, you know, Coco is no good, and if you played their normal game, you would have won, right? So there's no credit given to Coco. It's a horrible thing to say. I played horrible, but it was still 6-4 in the third. So there's a million other ways to make that sound better. You can talk about the tough conditions. You can talk about your struggles on the court, and while at the same time praising your opponent, who obviously was feeling a tremendous amount of pressure just like you and was fighting the conditions just like you. There's better ways to congratulate your opponent, but I think we saw a little bit what goes on inside of the Sabalenka head, and I think it's okay to believe those things. She obviously thinks that she's way better than Coco, and it's okay to believe that, but you got to keep that inside of your head, or just share those thoughts with your, you know, close ones. That's not something you want to say publicly for many reasons. First of all, she's getting a lot of deserved hate from that. And also, I think, you know, when opponents, especially Coco, hear that, like, she's going to be even more motivated to beat her now. So another context to this statement is the fact that the head-to-head was 6-5 Coco, right? She has a losing record to Coco. She lost her 6 times and beat her 5 times. And then you make that statement, how this is the worst match that I ever played, even though it was 6-4 in the third. So, yeah, that will go down as one of the worst speeches in the history, I think. And backing it up in the post-match presser, saying that Iga would have probably beaten Coco, that was even worse, actually. The post-match presser was worse than the actual trophy speech. And then she kind of walked it back on Instagram, but it wasn't really that, you know, it was kind of a non-apology to me. I didn't think that, you know, she was congratulating Coco and all that, but she was still then doubling down on how horrible she played. So, yeah, not good. I didn't like that at all.
No, and I think like she doubled down, as you said. Like, so she started with a very bad speech. I understand, like, there were some comments like, should you have to do a speech when you have lost the final? It's tennis. It's part of its history, right? It's a rough time to do a speech. You can do a short one and thank everyone and say, hey, like next year I come back stronger. That's you can do like a template speech. I think that is the best way when you're very emotional. Just do the bare minimum and then do a template speech. Like do a speech you've heard on TV, and let the winner do the speaking part. Don't go
I
and
don't.
talk too much.
Yeah, I think it's being yourself is the best, but don't be like your mean self. So I think what she should have done is when she started, it looked really good because she was crying, and people actually
Sympathize, yeah.
sympathize with someone that's crying. The loser, they sympathize with them. They'll give you a huge applause. So she started crying. She put her head back, and she should have said, "This hurts so much. I cannot believe I lost. I thought I had it." Like I think people will sympathize with that more
Mm,
rather than turning it into how horrible you played.
yeah.
She immediately said about, talking about how horrible she was playing right after that. So there was a mistake. You can let your emotions out, and it's okay to cry. And that's what's great about tennis, that we get to see the emotions of a player that brings out the emotions. And it's a one-on-one game, so that's okay. But yeah, the WTA is completely different from the ATP, and that's just one of many examples how there's a lot more camaraderie on the ATP. The WTA, even though it's changed a little bit, it's gotten better. Um, it's completely different story. These are fierce competitors, and it's clear that they don't have a lot of affection for each other. It's clear based on the
No.
handshakes and on some of the statements and interviews that they just don't like each other. And I think there is a entertainment factor there. And I would be a liar if I said that I wasn't entertained with the handshakes. But when it comes down to the post-match speech, I think it's a little bit different. And like I said, that just hit me the wrong way, and I'm not the only one. Many people were kind of turned off by that, right? So while we can appreciate competitive nature and kind of the handshakes are kind of funny and all that, but yeah, when it comes down to the tournament end, and it's such an emotional thing anyway, I think that's where you have to be classy to your opponent and not drag him down into your misery. You know what I mean?
Yep. I think that shows your true personality as well. Like if you can be classy in a defeat,
Yeah,
it shows that
sure,
you're a pretty solid human. And I think,
absolutely.
yeah, like the dead fish handshakes are pretty funny on WTA, but seeing like, I mean, Serena Williams ruined Naomi Osaka's first Grand Slam title and with her antics and stuff like that. That was not so.
That was probably even worse. I
That
forgot
was the
about that.
worst, I think. Yeah, that
That was probably
wins.
worse.
That wins. But this one
That
also is
worked, yeah.
like something for her to go back and really, because like
Yeah.
this stuff stays in the history books, and it kind of taints your personal brand. So you can't
Big
really
time.
just do an IG apology and expect people to be like, oh yeah, she's emotional, because it was too salty, it was too nasty to Coco. Like you don't have to be best friends, but you can always be classy. Like you can always give respect to your opponent, and that's what's nice in tennis, is when you respect your
Yeah.
opponent, but you want to beat them with everything you have, but the respect is still there. And I think to turn the spotlight on Carlitos and Yannick was really classy. Although he could have been like super pissed,
Yeah.
because 5.5
For sure.
hours, and he was actually close to winning. I mean, Sabalenka was close as well, but you can't say you play your worst tennis ever and lose in 3. If she lost 2-2, you can say, hey, I played 70 unforced errors. I was praying, but she lost 3 sets. So
If you
you
want to
can't
talk
say
about
that.
if you want to apologize for the quality of the match, you could have said like these were such difficult conditions.
Yeah.
Coco handled them much better, but it was so tough for me out here with the wind. That would have been acceptable.
Yep.
I
I think
think.
that would be great. Like
Yeah.
it was not my best day, and I
Yeah.
think the conditions played a part, but she handled it much better. Like
But even yeah,
yeah.
but even the conditions, it's like just yeah, just congratulate her and just tell her she did amazing, and congratulate her parents, and just that's what the men do, and it's just even if it's not 100% genuine from everyone, whatever, but it's just more professional, and you avoid drama. And again, like when it comes to you know, kind of being mean to your opponent. I never, you know, thought that that would be a smart tactical move because let's say you were a complete a-hole out there on the tennis court, right? You're just like antagonizing your opponent and you build up this motivation in your opponent to beat you even worse, you know? So I've always believed that a nice atmosphere on a court will allow you to perform better. Now, there are some players who will play better when they get into that type of atmosphere, but I think these players are in a minority. Maybe someone like Kyrgios, he does like kind of get pumped up from upsetting his opponents, but I feel most players that I've worked with and also myself, when I get into that state of mind where I'm angry at my opponent and I'm kind of upset, I don't play my best tennis. I play my best tennis when there's a friendly atmosphere. You know, that's when I can access my best tennis, and that's why I'm kind of calm mentally. And I think that applies to most players. So again, being mean to your opponent, and I even use that for like doing these arrogant shots sometimes, underhand serves and all that. But that's completely changed these days. It's become way more acceptable than it was back in the day. But yeah, any of that type of behavior will just, or let me give you another example. Like, let's say you have an easy ball, you can put it anywhere, but you ripped it right at your opponent, right? You hit him. That will just pump your opponent up to beat you even worse, right? So yeah, a nice atmosphere, respect to your opponent, playing fair. That's where most players access their best tennis because they can be kind of calm mentally and they're not all riled up. Because that kind of leads you to be all over the place, and not really play that well.
No, I had the exact same conversation with my buddy Adam, who played futures before, and we talked about that as well. Like we both play our best competitive tennis when we like our opponent. We respect our opponent, but we want to beat them. It's not like you're too nice to them. You're just like respecting them, so you're gonna play better. But sometimes you play guys who are really annoying and they try to cheat you or they try to do something, right? And that's a tougher way to find your right emotional state because you can go too hot or you can go like I don't give a shit, or you have to find that balance like of energy.
Yeah,
Tennis is a balance of energy. You want to be like a focus with some
for sure.
energy, but you don't want to overuse the energy. So it's a tricky
Yeah, for
balance.
sure. For sure. I agree 100%. Yeah, no, like it doesn't mean that you're not gonna be competitive and want to win really badly when you play your best friend. Like that's if that's the case, then you got a serious problem, and maybe tennis is not the right sport for you because that should be always something that's like right there. You wanting to win the point really badly, no matter who's on the other side, right? So if you feel like you don't have that, that's a huge problem in the game of tennis. So yeah, no, that's being competitive and wanting to win really badly. You can see that when Alcaraz plays against Sinner, right? Like these guys, they're not friends, but they respect each other, but yet like they fight, you know, to their death to beat up on each other, and yeah, that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a great rivalry. I think it's great for tennis. What do you
Sure.
think where do you think it goes now? Like, so this is always an interesting period in the season, right? Like
Yeah.
going from, I love clay. Like I love the French Open. I like the tournaments leading up to the French Open. I don't love playing
Yeah.
on clay, but I like it as a surface. Like watching on clay, I love it. Following the tour, my favorite part of the
Yeah.
season. Then it goes to the grass where I have mixed emotions, right? Like I like the grass with its history, but some of the events leading up to Wimbledon are too fast, too boring to watch. Sadly, like it's just for me, I struggle a bit. Like where are you on this spectrum? And then we could get into like who do you think will win of Djokovic, Alcaraz, Sinner?
So I agree with you to a certain extent. It's tough to get hyped up about these lead up tournaments. And I think if you look at the lead up tournaments to the four Grand Slams, I feel like Australia, just because of its calendar, it's tricky to have a lot of lead up tournaments because it's happening in January, right? So,
But by
players
the
can
way,
go
sorry to
into.
interrupt you. They might move it to February. I heard 2027.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's the
Wow.
rumors swirling around.
I think it would make a lot more sense, yeah. But it has to be in the Australian summer, right, for it to make sense financially for the tournament, right?
Yeah.
for attendance and all that. But yeah, so in any case, you could, if you're a top contender, you don't necessarily have to play a lead-up tournament to Australia to do well, right? And I think it's the same for Wimbledon, just because similar to Australia, like everybody's kind of in the same position where it's just such a short season prior to Wimbledon that you could go in there, like Djokovic has done many times, without playing any lead-up tournament, just that one exhibition in Roehampton or whatever, get a few matches in, get comfortable on the grass, and then you still, as a top contender, have a chance to win the tournament. So for that reason, because there's really not that much importance to those tournaments, I feel like they don't mean that much. And of course, they're also not Masters 1000. So even if somebody like shows up to Queens, like Alcaraz plays Queens usually, Sinner plays Halle, and let's say they don't win, right? They lose first round. It doesn't matter. Like even Rafa was losing first round in Halle many times. He lost to Dustin Brown. He lost to Vasquez one year. No, he didn't lose to Brown. Or did he? Okay, I don't
He
remember.
lost to Brown in Wimbledon.
He lost to Brown in Wimbledon. I think he lost to him in Halle too. I don't know, but
Maybe.
he definitely lost to Alexander Vasquez in Halle. And he still, I don't remember 100%, but he still probably made the Wimbledon final after, right? So that happened to Alcaraz last year. He lost his first match in Queens and still won Wimbledon. So for that reason, like people are like, yeah, who cares, you know? So I agree with you. It's a tough preseason prior to Wimbledon. It's tough to get super hyped up about Halle and Queens, right? And then there's other tournaments like Birmingham and Eastbourne and Hertogenbosch, and the Stuttgart is going on right now. I think you were in Stuttgart last year.
I've been there like 7 years or something. Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
First year I'm not going.
Mallorca too is a new tournament. So you know, it's like I said, it's tough to get hyped up for those. But you know, as a tennis fan and someone that lived in North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany, where Halle is in Ostwestfalen, so I played against Halle, the club, because you know the tournament's part of a tennis club. We played against them so many times, right? And I played tournaments there. So I've been to that tournament so many times. So I got kind of a connection to Halle, and I always watch that one. I watch Halle every year. So for me, like I'm such a huge fan that I will watch. I don't care. I'm even watching right now. I'm right now watching. As soon as Roland Garros finished, I started watching some of those 125Ks in Birmingham. I started watching the women's final between Furvitova and was a Minen, I think, Minen. And Furvitova lost in the final, but you know, so I'm always watching tennis. It doesn't matter what season it is. And so for me, it's completely different. But yeah, I see what you're saying, that you're not that pumped up about it. But once Wimbledon comes around, I think people get super hyped, right? Like I think Wimbledon is still, for a lot of people, the most prestigious tournament and the one that gets a ton of attention. So once we get into Wimbledon, it's like everybody's wearing white, something special about it, and we're gonna get hyped up. We're gonna get pumped up for that one, and it's super exciting. You asked me who I think is gonna win, so I haven't really thought about it that much yet. It's gonna be quite a tricky analysis. I want to see the draw, of course, see where Djokovic ends up, whether he's on top or bottom. So it's gonna be tricky. It's gonna be tricky to analyze that one. But I think, you know, I've analyzed so much. Last week, the Sinner Alcaraz had a matchup, and you know, I think when the courts are faster, advantage Sinner generally, but movement, slight advantage Alcaraz. So movement is so important on grass. So again, this is gonna be a super boring thing to say, but it's a 50-50 match that's going to come down to a few points here and there. That's going to always be the case for those two, especially if they're meeting in finals, you know? So yeah, it's going to take a lot of thought. When I make that draw, I'm going to have to really think hard who I'm going to pick to win that one. I have no idea right now.
Fair. Yeah, no, I always go to the Boss Open or the Mercedes Cup, and I love the vibe there. The atmosphere is great. I love playing on grass. It's one of my favorite. I've been able to practice on their practice courts with the pros, so that's been amazing. So I do love the vibe personally, but it's sometimes a little bit of a mental shift to go from the clay and the grass, and it doesn't feel as important. But I also, being a tennis nerd such as you, I also started watching already yesterday because my buddy Roman was playing against Petri Pericard, and it was a tough 3-set loss. But it's
Yeah,
it
very
it
hard stuff on grass. Yeah,
yeah, it's to your nightmare opponent to get on grass almost.
that's
Uh,
tough. Yeah.
it's tough, but it's still fun, like, because the transition from clay to grass is giving the players a challenge, and that's also nice. Like you have to actually adjust so much in your footwork, so much in your stroke production, how you play strategically. Everything has to adjust from one surface to the other.
I got a funny story relating to that. And back in the day, it was said that if you played on grass, you can only play if you serve and volley. You can't play from the baseline. So relating to Halle, one of my best friends in Germany and a very frequent practice partner, someone that's from the same county as me in Germany. His name was Ralf Wilming. He was an amazing player, semifinals Orange Ball. He was number 2 in Germany in juniors. He never really committed to playing full time on tour. I think he did have some ATP points, but he went to college and started teaching kind of early, and he played a lot of clubs in Germany, so he never really pursued the pro route, but an incredible talent as a player. And he got a wild card for Halle one year to play, and they told him that this was what was the strong belief back then, that he has to serve and volley. You can't play from the baseline. And Ralph was like a baseline machine. He was a lefty, and he just never came to the net, only to shake hands. So he had pretty decent volleys, but he was a baseliner, right? So he plays Patrick Kühnen, first round of qualies, who's like already like close to retirement. He was already old at that point. And Patrick was once in the 4th round of Wimbledon, I think. Great grass court player. And so Ralph goes out there and he serves and volleys first and second serve every point on center court at Gary Weber Stadium. And he loses like 0-1. And afterwards, he was so pissed because he probably would have maybe even beat Patrick at that point if he just would have stayed back, So that was an incredible shift, going from clay to a grass where you couldn't play from the baseline. That's why back in the day, a lot of the clay court specialists didn't even play on grass. They didn't even enter the tournament. And, it would be the most laughable thing to say that one of those guys is going to go deep in Wimbledon. So this has completely changed now because, from what I've heard, grass now plays so different. And of course, you can play from the baseline, right? Like you see the center court in Wimbledon in the second week, and especially in the final, and you see where the court is used up. It's used up behind the baseline. So that shift going from clay to grass is still a very difficult shift, but it's nothing like what it used to be. And you could make the argument that it would be fun to see how these guys would do if they were forced to serve and volley. And you make that grass so that you can't rally from the back. Like the bounce is so low and so bad that you have to come in all the time. And what would tennis look like if that was the case? I think it would be interesting, even though, like, personally, I'm not that much of a nostalgic for the serve and volley era. I was never a huge fan of that type of style. I found it quite boring. I like baseline tennis more, but I think where it gets fun is when you see the contrast, when you have a serve and volley or play against a baseliner. So it's such a tough thing to say. I do think Wimbledon probably made the right move, But yeah, it's the right move, but it's also going to produce similar results to Roland Garros. It's not going to be that different. But before, huge discrepancy between the players that did well in Roland Garros and the players that did well in Wimbledon. Now you're going to see very similar faces in the 4th round and the quarterfinals and so on. So, yeah.
I think that's good though, because like the sport has to not. I mean, it still is a contrast. Like the conditions are very different, the bounce is very different, but the best players will still win. Like that's generally it. Like you want to see the best players win, so you don't want to have like crazily lopsided results. I don't like that. I wasn't being an Edinburgh. Yeah, go ahead.
But just going back, what I was saying, it's not that you see weird players, because there was different seasons in tennis back in the day. So you had the clay court specialists, like people that had no chance on fast surfaces, and then you had the fast court specialists that had difficulty on slow surfaces. So, these were all players together ranked in whatever, the top 40 or top 30, and some of them were more specialists. So, that's the difference, right? So that's, you could make the argument that that would make tennis more exciting, when you all of a sudden give an advantage to a player that's going to do so much better on a fast court, or vice versa on a slow court. It is interesting. And then maybe all of a sudden you get someone like Agassi, who won Wimbledon in '92, right, out of nowhere as a baseliner. So it could be exciting. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not nostalgic for the Serve volley era, but I think when it comes to like everything in a game of tennis, whether it's technique, whether it's playing styles, whether it's surfaces, whether it's balls, too much uniformity is bad because it makes it more boring. When you switch things up, it gets a little bit more exciting, you know? So when you have guys that have different techniques, different playing styles, when you have different surfaces, some super lightning fast, some super slow, it's going to make things different, and I think it's going to be more entertaining overall. So bring carpet back. Carpet needs to come back right now.
I hate carpet. I hate playing on carpet, at least.
I was just talking about that. I was just talking about that yesterday in my live. Like, somebody brought up Michael Stich in the comments, and
Yeah.
I just on my memory, I was like remembering the final against Sampras that he won in '93 or '94, and then I looked it up after to see when they actually played, and it turned out they played on carpet, and then they actually switched the ATP finals from carpet to hard court. So they used to play that tournament on carpet. Can you imagine? They played the ATP finals on carpet.
I'm not shocked.
And
Like tennis has changed quite a bit,
so,
over the years.
So it was like, imagine playing on carpet against Stich or Becker or Sampras. And actually, it was, you know what? Sampras didn't like carpet.
No, I know.
Sampras, there was the German guys like Becker and Stich that, of course, grew up on carpet, and they were masters of that surface. So yeah, again, I think it's like I said, when you vary it up, I think it makes it more fun, more interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, it's true that maybe didn't come across that way, but I do actually appreciate the surfaces being different, because it, like, this does make it even more difficult, that you have to have an even more all-around game to say, hey, okay, I can also serve and volley. I can play. Like, I think Alcaraz Sinner now, they're so good, so they could probably adapt quite easily to, I mean, Nadal, people will like, oh, this is a clay courter guy. Well, he overcame all surfaces in the end, because he is such a good athlete that he will do it,
Sure.
So I think, but before, back then, yeah, if you had a huge serve, then grass was your friend, or indoor carpets or whatever. And then if you were like a Argentinian clay courter who could run for days, then that you would only hang around in the clay court season. Yeah? And we still have these guys a little bit, but it's not as extreme as it was maybe in the 80s, 90s,
There's still, I agree, there's still a few guys here and there, but not many, to be honest. Yeah, it's nowadays, all these guys can play on any surface.
Yeah.
Clay,
They have to.
grass, hard, they can play on anything. That used to be the case.
Yeah, it's true. No, I mean, you have to, because otherwise you can just, you can not play for such a big part of the season, and financially that makes zero sense. Like, you need to be able to adjust, and follow the calendar a little bit.
Being a huge Rafa fan, I always thought it was very unfair that the clay court season is so short, because in many parts of the world, clay is a super important surface. And back in the day, there were no hard courts in Europe. Like, especially in Germany, there just simply weren't any hard courts. Now it's different, but because of that, I feel like the season should be split half and half between clay and hard court. And I'm a little bit biased being from Europe, but I do love clay the most. Clay is, for me, the most fun surface to watch tennis on. Like, I like hard court too, don't get me wrong. I probably like grass the least, to be quite honest with you. But I do think it's not right to, for example, have the ATP finals just on hard court. Like, why not switch it up, right? Make it on grass one year, make it on clay one year. Like, again, like, variety is going to help. Like, maybe turn some of these tournaments from hard court into clay. Why not make Indian Wells and Miami clay? I know it's crazy, but that would be cool. That if the clay court season started like like that, like right after the Australian Open, clay court season, and it lasts all the way to Wimbledon.
Yep.
I think when that's the case, now you're talking about the best of all time. It changes things because you can make the argument that the greatest of all time on hard court is Djokovic, on clay it's Rafa, and on grass it's Federer. So you have a different GOAT for each surface. And now if you switch it up and you want to pick an overall GOAT, you have to take into consideration how much tennis is played on hard court. You have to talk about that, right? When you have 2 slams on hard court and most of the Master Series tournaments on hard, it's a little bit more of a difficult analysis to say who's the best player, because I do think surfaces, they're so important when it comes to performance and your strengths and weaknesses and so forth. So, well, what do you think? Do you think I'm like being crazy to say that it would be cool to have a longer clay season? Because
No,
I think that would be cool, because I enjoy clay court tennis very much. And how many people enjoyed that match a couple of days ago, right? That was on clay. That was one of the best matches of all time. So there's something cool about clay. Like, these guys are like warriors out there. They get all dirty, and it's like there's something special about it. And I not only like watching it, I also really enjoy playing on clay. And like I said, I grew up on it, so it's a little different. I don't really like hard through it here in Florida that much. It's that green clay, but the red clay, I love it.
Yeah, I'm same. It's not my favorite, best surface to play on, really, but I just love the whole vibe on a clay court. I feel like when I'm on a clay court, if it's a nice clay court. Some clay courts are badly kept, right?
Yeah.
It just feels right, and watching the French Open just feels right. Watching Monte Carlo, these events leading up Rome, it's something about it feels like history, right? Like this, and I don't have it with any other surface the same way. And I think it would be good if it were split a little bit more. I think that would be actually a good idea. I would also
sorry, go ahead.
I would also want to get back. You talked about Becker and Sampras, and I remember those days. Like, it's get back the 5-set Masters final, like at least in the ATP finals. Like, put 5 sets in the final. Like, that was a great. Like, this is the final. It's 5 sets. That I miss that, because that's the battle, right? That's what we get a lot of TV viewing on.
I'm gonna go even deeper than that, and I think they should make the women's finals best of 5.
100% agree.
That would completely eliminate these arguments that people are having, where sometimes you just get unlucky. We talked about how Sinner Alcaraz could have been 3 sets to love Sinner, right? If he doesn't get really broken early in that third, this could have been like his 3-set match. Would have been less exciting, and this happens sometimes, that you get a blowout in the final. And imagine if the blowout is like in a best of 3 match, and the match is like 2-1 or something like that. It's over an hour, so you can completely eliminate that risk. And the stupid comments afterwards, how these women are getting paid the same, but they play so much less. Make it best of 5, and there's so many great athletes highly capable of playing best of 5 on the women's tour, and I think that would be something that, quite frankly, I don't understand why they stopped doing it, because they used to do it way back in the day, right?
I remember
they used to do it at one tournament, and that would be something that would be super entertaining. And as far as the Master Series tournaments, now that they've extended them to 2 weeks, right? Like, make it best of 5,
Yep.
I think back in the day they were able to handle it. And we had some epic matches. I mean, how many best of 5 thrillers in Rome, right? Corey and Nadal was one of the best of 5 matches of all time. And Nadal Federer 1 year in Rome.
Yeah, that's a legendary match. That was a great match.
So you can have these legendary matches, So I agree with you. I think best of 5 and finals of Masters, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, and it makes it like you can just go back to this final, like it becomes like a piece of art, like a historical moment, because like
absolutely
you can come back from 2 sets down, everything is in your against you, and then you come back. It becomes like a amazing moment in sports history. Like, but if you have a 3-setter, it's kind of, I mean, a 3-set match can be tight and tough, but it can't build the storyline of a 5-set match. And if
Yeah,
you know, at least the finals, I think should be 5-set. I think that would be good. And also on the women's side, I mean, definitely. And they could
we
even do it
agree.
from the remove on the women's side if they want to remove these discussions. Okay, you reach the quarterfinal, you play 5-set in the women's Grand Slams. Then you have it. You know, they could do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they should. I really think they should. Um, yeah.
Cool, man. All right, so we have a commercial break of what's happening with intuitive tennis before we move into, I think a part where I think a lot of people are curious about your racket journey, because there are a lot of racket nerds listening, of course.
Yeah, of course, of course.
But what's going on with intuitive tennis? You're working on, as always, more than 300,000 followers now on YouTube.
So I have a website, um, intuitivetennis.com. That's a membership website, and the membership is called Intuitive Tennis Premium. And it has a lot of videos that you'll find only there. These are premium videos. And I have a lot of things that I offer as benefits to becoming a member to Intuitive Tennis Premium. So I encourage everyone to sign up. And basically what I give is a more of a deeper or a more personal access to me, where I really try to take care of my players that are part of Premium. And you know, there's discounts on private coaching, video analysis. There are even discounts on like courses and stuff like that. So I offer a lot of benefits for being a member, and I encourage everyone to join this community and just work on, you know, maximizing your potential as a tennis player, because that's the goal. And you'll have a more direct access to me if you become a member. So intuitivetennis.com, you get a 7-day free trial to try it out. And from then on, it's $14.99 a month. And I have not raised the price in 4 years. Kept the same price. It's a crazy price because when you do the math, like it doesn't make sense. I should have raised the price because you know, it's quite expensive to run this membership site. So I don't really make that much money with it, but I just want to create a community of players. And for that reason, I don't want to increase the price too much and keep it as affordable as possible. So yeah, it's $14.99 a month, $14.99 a month, and you even get a 7-day free trial. You can check it out, and it's also available on the iOS App Store, the Apple App Store. You can get the Intuitive Tennis app, which is basically Intuitive Tennis Premium that you get on the browser at intuitivetennis.com.
Cool, man. That's great. I say the same for Tennis Nerd members. I appreciate people becoming members, and I think a membership is easier to give a lot more to, partly because it's nice to have a community and you can be a lot more open when you have a smaller community. Okay, man. So now we're in the weeds of the rackets again, and
right.
where
now
are
it's
you?
gonna get fun.
Yeah, it's
Now
gonna
it's
get
gonna get fun.
sweaty for you. No, I'm joking. So what's up right now? You've tried pretty much every new racket, and you ended up with the Wilson Shift 99 in the end after lots and lots of testing, many videos. And where are you based? Where are you now? Like you're playing some training matches. You're actually competing a bit, right?
I had this idea that when I started testing last year, I didn't know when it was going to be done. It ended up taking forever. I started testing in June, and the reason for the testing was that the painted old Babolat Pure Dry Plus just was tattoo heavy from the paint. And these rackets are so beat up, they're old, and I only had 3 of them. I actually lost a racket. I left it on the court. I was so sad.
I've also done that. So yeah.
I do this all the time. I did this in college one time. My dad, because I played with Hammer back then, and he sent me 4 of them. And you always just take my rackets and a towel to the practice courts. I don't know why. So I would like just have no bag or anything, and then, you know, I would put the rackets against the fence and take one racket and practice. And one time I left only with 1 racket and left the other ones on the court. And then I realized it. Maybe like a couple hours later, I went back to the courts and they were gone. And it was very sad. And I've done that multiple more times after. And I did it even with my Pure Drive that discontinued. You can't even get it on eBay. You can't get a plus on eBay in my grip size. And I left it on the court. So I only had 3 left, right? And they were so banged up. One, I think, had a hairline fracture and 2 cracks. So I decided I have to switch rackets, right? And I started testing, and the testing took forever. And my idea was that once I find a racket that's suitable for me, that I was going to start playing a lot of matches. Because last summer I played quite a bit, and I was playing pretty decent actually. And so it was so funny how I ended up with the shift, because it's not easy to find the correct racket for you, because you have to look at, what you're trying to do with your game. Of course, the racket has to be suitable to you, and it has to feel good in your hand, and it has to kind of allow you to access your strengths, right? It shouldn't take away from your strengths. So I actually made quite an interesting choice, because that Wilson shift racket did take away a little bit from my strengths. Like my serve didn't feel quite as good. And then my backhand definitely didn't feel quite as good as the Pure Drive. But I focused on my biggest weakness, which was my forehand and very specific strokes with my forehand. And that's where the shift was a huge help. And so I made the decision with the idea of improving my forehand and then slowly kind of adjusting my strengths to be the same as with the Pure Drive. That was my thought process. And it made a lot of sense that even you agreed with it, because we talked privately. Because my forehand continues to deteriorate, especially when I'm, as the older I get. So I really thought that the shift could help me. And I think it actually did a lot. It helped me a lot on my forehand. But it just gets so complex because, I started playing these matches and I started realizing that I'm playing some of the worst tennis of my life. And of course, as a player, you immediately blame the equipment. It can't possibly be you, right? So I would just say, this, let me go back to the Pure Drive, right? So I actually bought a couple of the 2021 Pure Drive Pluses, but then I would just continue to play poorly even with that racket. And so it was so confusing to me. I couldn't play with any racket. I'm even on my serve and my backhand, like it was not that much better. So I was like, man, I just, what's going on? Maybe I just suck now. I'm too old. I've gotten so much worse. That was my thought process for a long time. And so I gave the shift, a long chance and play with it in many matches. I have a couple of matches on my website, one on YouTube against Andre with the shift. And, I was convincing myself that it's okay. It's not the racket, it's the player. But what was so enlightening to me was speaking to you about my testing phase privately, and you shared so many times how you play with so many different rackets and how it's so bad for your game. And I started realizing that me getting so much worse and playing some of the worst tennis ever this year. And the confusing thing is that I'm doing a lot of work. I'm doing more fitness and I'm playing more tennis than I have in many, many years. I'm getting myself in pretty good shape, and yet I'm playing horrible and losing to players that I didn't lose to before. Like, very confusing. So I was so enlightened by your comment to me privately where you said, you probably hurt your game with the testing phase that definitely went on too long. How many rackets did you test? And I said probably like 50. And I think that destroyed my game completely. And it definitely changed my preferences because, while that racket didn't feel perfect, the old painted Pure Drive Plus, when I pick that racket up now, I can't play with it at all. And last summer, I was playing with it just fine, playing quite well actually. So that testing phase completely changed my racket preferences. And actually, the shift, playing with it it's been close to half a year that I've been playing with the shift. It's actually destroyed my ability to play with an extended racket. So I play with a 27.5-inch racket for, let's see, for 25 years. Yeah, 25 years. Because I started with the Hyper Hammer in 2000, I think. So I've been playing with an extended racket for 25 years. And this period of time, from June last year to now, destroyed my ability to play with an extended racket. I just can't do it anymore. It doesn't feel right. It's hurting my serve, actually, believe it or not. Like I'm serving worse with an extended racket. And my forehand is even worse than it's ever been. And my intention was to improve my forehand. And so when I go back to the extended racket now, it's hurting my forehand a lot. So, what I've learned through this experience is that you should never change rackets if you don't have to. But, sometimes you have to because rackets get discontinued and you run out of them, or they break, or they get too old. So I think when you find the perfect racket for you, you got to stock up and get 20 of them if you can. And that's what I should have done, because changing rackets is a very, very bad thing to do. And testing rackets is something that is very difficult to find a racket that you're going to like. And so the testing phase should be as short as possible, because again, your preferences to rackets will change if you do it for months. And now you're not going to know what you like. It's going to get very confusing. And nothing's going to feel quite right, not even your old equipment. So that's the tricky thing, because it's such a feel-based sport, tennis. And I would never do that again, what I did. I think it was a very good content and it was very valuable. But I'll never, ever, ever want to get into a position where I'm switching rackets. So the next racket that I finally select as my new racket will be a 27-inch racket. It's most likely going to be probably a pure drive. I just don't know which version, because right now I'm playing with the 21. And there's some other things that I haven't really discussed publicly. I'm still thinking about whether to do it or not, but I might dedicate a video to the subject. And there's a couple more things that had been quite concerning regarding rackets. So I'm still going to clarify some of these statements, and I kind of leave it up in the air what I'm going to do next, because I don't know 100%. So just kind of stay tuned. I'll probably post a video on this very quickly, actually, probably next week or in a couple of weeks' time. Before Wimbledon, I'll give an update on my racket situation, and I need to find a solution, because there's something else that's been happening that's quite concerning. So it's been an absolute nightmare. I was so happy to have selected this shift, because I thought that this was going to be the perfect racket for me, and I was playing really well with it, and hitting the ball in practice was awesome. But then once I started playing matches, it became very complicated, and matches reveal everything. They not only reveal your strengths and weaknesses, they reveal everything. And yeah, it was something that I had to be done. And I just wish I didn't let it go on for so long, because the problem was, as I explained in my final playtest video, that I had to cover the Grand Slams, because that's something that I do. So there was chunks of time from when I started where there'd be like probably a month and a half of breaks in between. And then it was probably like one video per week when it wasn't a slam. So that's why it took forever. And I kept swapping between rackets, and I kept buying rackets. I got so many rackets now, because I didn't want to get rackets sent to me. So I have Solenkos. The only company that sent me rackets was Technifiber and Diadem. But everything else I bought. So I have so many rackets, and I would just grab this one and that one. And there was some matches where literally I went on a court and I didn't know what to play with. I had in my bag, I had a Percept, a Shift, and I had a Solinko, and I was just grabbing one and then the other, and then I would start playing poorly and start swapping rackets. Again, I didn't do it correctly. I should have just did maybe a month of testing, intense testing, and then just made a decision. I think my preferences wouldn't have changed so much like they did. So I definitely let it go on too long, So because if I would have let it last for a month, I still would have been able to play with the old Pure Drive Plus, my old painted racket. I still would have been able to play with that one after a month. But I'm telling you, Jonas, I can't play with it anymore, because it's been so long since I played with that racket. I can't play with it anymore because my preferences have shifted. It feels like it's the like when I grab that racket, I'm like, how was I ever able to play with this? I mean, of course, now it's the same when I grab my old hyper hammer, right? But the thought is like, how was I ever able to play with this racket? And I like the racket only like it was June or it was May 2024, and it was perfectly fine. Like, so that's the crazy thing about rackets. So definitely should have been a month, and I would have, I think, made a better choice. But again, like it's the YouTube thing. I wanted to make it into a series, and it was very challenging to do. These were like videos that required a lot of time to produce, and it is what it is. It just happened that way.
Yeah, it's good content because people love to hear about rackets, but like exactly
Yeah.
like we've talked about offline as well. It's as soon
Mhm.
as you get into the jungle, like the racket jungle, you need to get out of there pretty quickly because otherwise the jungle just grows
Yeah,
thicker and thicker and you get
it
lost.
does.
And that's what happened to you, and it happened to me.
Mhm.
I mean, I've tried every racket on comes out on the market, so for me to build
Yeah,
muscle memory with one model is close to impossible, and it's I know exactly the feeling you've been experiencing.
horrible. It's horrible, and you get so confused. You don't know what's going on. But
No, yeah,
I just listened to a Tsitsipas interview with the Changeover guys. I don't know if you're familiar with that podcast.
yeah, they're doing well right now.
And yeah, and he was talking about his Dubai tournament
The arrow.
with the Aero 98, right? So he lost to Medvedev. Uh, he in Doha the week before, where uh,
Tight match, yeah. 3 sets.
Medvedev was cramping and was playing on one leg and still beat Tsitsipas.
Yeah.
So maybe one of the lowest points of Tsitsipas's career, right? Losing that match. Then in the next tournament, he plays with the 98 Aero and he wins Dubai, which is a 500, right?
Yep.
Big win. In the semifinal, he had like a backhand shot quality with through the roof. Like it was incredible. Like backhand shot quality was insane.
Mm-hmm.
Tsitsipas said in this interview that he had some trouble playing with the old, was it blade, right?
98, yeah. K-blade, yeah.
Yeah. He had trouble because the balls are slower and he felt like he had to muscle every ball and he had to really put a lot of force into the shots because the conditions were so slow. And he started feeling pain in his shoulder and his arm, and it was taking a toll on his body. And he said that when he played with the Aero 98, all those issues went away. So, this kind of goes back to something that people were criticizing me for. Like there's some videos where I said stiff rackets are better for the arm, but that's not actually what I said. It's not just stiff rackets because you could play with the racket that's discontinued now, but with the old Babolat Pure Drive Tour, that's like super heavy and stiff, the old Roddick racket, I think they discontinued it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I know them. The tour
So,
one.
so that racket, not necessarily good for the arm. It's going to destroy your arm, especially if you string it tight. But what I'm talking about is responsiveness, is that the racket's going to help you with power where you don't have to force your shot so much. The racket's going to do some of the work for you. I believe that's going to be easier on your arm. So part of what makes a racket responsive is stiffness. Okay, so that's definitely true. And it just goes to show you that Tsitsipas was able to solve a lot of problems by going with the Aero 98, which is a stiffer racket and a more powerful racket. So it took away some of the pain in his arm, and it also improved his weakness, which is the backhand.
Yeah.
Um, Interestingly, once he played Monte Carlo, he switched back to the blade because somebody told him that the blade is a better racket for the clay court. So he went back to the blade. And the results haven't been that great. So, it just goes to show you how confusing it is. With somebody like Stefano Tsitsipas, like, he was a set away from winning Roland Garros. He's has these battles, you know, when it comes to rackets. He's battling these thoughts about rackets and what to do. And let's see what he does during grass, whether he's going to go back to the 98. What do you know anything or?
Yeah, so I've been in touch with Stefanos since 2023 about rackets, and
Yeah,
it's been an ongoing process, like
yeah,
testing different things within Wilson, maybe
yeah,
now with the Arrow. And we talked after every match, or like chatted after every match during Dubai as
yeah.
well.
Uh-huh.
And I thought like the way he played the backhand, like what he told me is like that it felt like playing a new sport, which can be good and it can be bad, right? So, and I think the backhand was
Yeah,
amazing. I think his forehand had more potency, he had more power.
yeah,
Obviously, one thing that happens to everyone with a new racket is there's a honeymoon period where you feel like you have a new toy. It's like a new car or something new in your life, a new golf club, and it
uh-huh.
makes you inspired to play more, use your feet more, play better. Like you're like with a smile on your face because it's like it makes it
That's true.
more fun to play. And when that honeymoon period stops, or at some point it's going to end, like, and you might have a bad result. Like, it might not be due to the racket, it might be due to something else, but a bad result will come at some point. Then everyone
How
starts doubting the racket, like, oh, I shouldn't have switched because then I would never have any bad results.
how
And
long does the honeymoon phase last, in
it
your
can
opinion?
last from 1 month to whatever, like to 1 week, But I don't see it usually longer than like a month. That's I think is from what I heard. I talk to people all the time with racket switches and on Pro Tour
Yeah,
and outside Pro
interesting.
Tour.
Yeah, I think it varies from player to player, obviously, but there's that, and then there's also data that you can look at, um, where the shot quality on his backhand goes through the roof. I don't know if you can necessarily achieve that just by being excited about a new racket. I do think that the racket itself is going to give a little bit of advantages there. So, in my opinion, that he made a mistake. I think he made a mistake, especially if he's having arm problems. So, where a more responsive racket, took away some of those arm problems. Why would you ever go back to the blade if you're complaining about the conditions being so slow and the blade forces you to do so much work to get power? It makes no sense to me. I hope that he, especially now that he's working with Goran, that he tries to give the arrow another chance during the grass court season. That'd be interesting to see if he does that and how he performs.
Yeah, I'm 100% behind you on that. Like, we haven't talked for a bit, but it's like I really believe it was a bad decision personally to go back. Like, I felt like it wasn't the right move. This stuff can get into your head. Like, I won Monte Carlo last year with the blade, and this year I didn't win it. Like, you can put these, but that makes no
But,
real sense.
but
It's a
that's
different.
why that's why I brought him up.
I know.
Because again, he's like, this is a guy that's like elite, and he's battling these racket demons in his head, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's tough. Like I said in the very beginning of this talk, like, it's best to not change rackets ever. And if you want to change something, like, change the tension or change the strings, but the racket, like, it's dangerous. It's very dangerous. You can fall into a big trap.
Yeah, I think like there are you have to be very smart about it. Like, so that this is my take on changing rackets. It's like Federer, he had a problem with the 90 square inch pro staff that he used for so long. Rafa was demolishing him
Yeah,
with the one-handed backhand. He sought to
yeah,
fix that problem, so he went on to like a challenging year, 2013 to 14, when they developed the new. I mean, he tried other rackets during this process. Of course, he tried quite a few different rackets from Wilson, and in
yeah,
the end, they developed the RF97. And it took
yeah,
him a while, but then he won 3 more slams with this racket. Like, and it was the right change because suddenly he had more power. He could attack the ball better. He had a little bit more
yeah,
forgiveness. I think in Stefanos' case, he has had elbow surgery. He had some issues with the shoulder. The K blade is a demanding racket to use. You really need to put everything behind the ball all the time, 18-20 pattern. And he plays with good spin, so he's a spin-oriented player. Like, and the one-handed backhand is a liability for him, right? So, and it hit it better with the arrow. So for me, this was like a great move in the right direction, and then the train stops there. Like, you don't, the train is now there. He wins a tournament. For me, that's when you stay. Now you stay with that season
yeah.
out for sure. Like, I mean, there should be something serious for him to go back. Not just like 2 bad results, because that can happen. Like, but like, work with the racket, get a new coach or whatever. He was in the process with Goran, of course, and then work with the racket, build your results. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
the Aero 98 is not a magical racket, but it, like you said, it is stiffer. You get a lot more spin compared to the blade, and it's easier to play. So you can defend better in the corners. You can get a little bit more free power in the corners. That's what Alcaraz gets. I mean, Alcaraz, he hits miss-hit winners, you know, like he hits a miss-hit that becomes a winner. That's with the Blade 98. You're not going to do that. Like that, it's not happening. It's a very precise, demanding frame. So,
but look at Bublik.
Yeah, same thing.
He switched to the Aero, and his game like went way up. And I was hearing like during the coverage how that's a power racket and now it's not a feel racket. I disagree. I think the Aero is a great racket for feel.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just look at Rafa and how much feel he had, look at Alcaraz, how much feel he has, look at Bublik, how much feel he has. Do you think you can only make feel with like a so-called feel racket that's very flexible? No, you can make feel with a power racket as well.
Of course, there's nothing saying that like because it's a low-powered racket, it has better feel. I play with the Aero still, like you know myself, so I'm a little, maybe sometimes biased, but I cannot hit a better drop shots with any other racket, even the Prestige, right? So
there you go. You go.
I think that is a little bit. However, it has liveliness. It's very explosive, so it's easy. And I think this is what happened to Steph. Is like you start spraying some balls. This is gonna happen with this racket. Carlito sprays balls. Everybody plays with Aero sprays balls. But you get that back in interest with winners or with unreturned points because you're more dangerous, right? So this is a calculation that you have to make. But you're gonna miss more. Like it's just the nature of the game. You're gonna miss more because it's a more powerful racket, you know.
To me, with Tsitsipas, it's such a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer for him because of all that stuff that we talked about. Like the conditions are slower. He's therefore muscling the ball. He's getting some pain. And the backhand keeps getting worse and worse, so to speak. So problem solved. Dubai title. Backhand shot quality through the roof. You know, Tennis Insights posts on Instagram how shot quality on Tsitsipas Dubai semis was like 9.8 or whatever. Like, no brainer, man. Why? I think it's a big mistake that he went back to the blade. Big mistake because now he's back in the old, with the old issues. Everything is coming back. You know, he's going to force the power. He's going to have to work extra hard. And, you know, it's tougher to get these advantages through the strings. I mean, of course you can, but if you're already playing with a string and then you change it to a string that's very similar to that one, it's not going to be that big of a difference, you see?
No. No. I mean, it has to come from their frame in this case. I think the string is not going to make enough for a difference.
It's because the strings are very similar. It's very similar materials. So the racket is going to make the big change.
Yep.
And that racket to me is like, I made a top 5 racket video a long time ago. And back then, you know, it's changed now, but back in that video, I did some research and the Aero was the most used racket in the top 500 men and women on tour. And I don't know if that's still true. I know a lot of people that used to use the Aero have switched to Yonex. And Yonex now is like on the up and up, but I rated that racket as, if I remember correctly, it was the second best racket in the history of tennis, the Aero. And of course, there's different versions and all that, but it's one of the all-time great rackets, you know?
Yeah, as a family of rackets, it's one of the all-time greats. And Rafa helped it, of course, and now Carlos is helping it. But you have Carlos, you have Rune, you have Fils, you have Stefanos for a while. Now we have Bublik maybe switching. It's also many other players like below that.
I got a question for you, Jonas. Is there anyone that plays with 100? I mean, I know Rafa played with 100, right?
Yeah, they're like Mikkelsen plays with 100, for example.
Okay.
There are a few.
Did Query play with 100? Query?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not.
But a lot of the younger, isn't that interesting that the younger guys like Rune, Alcaraz, Bublik, Fils, they all play with 98, no?
But it's funny with the 98 because it has so much power, but the 1620 helps a little bit with the control compared to the 100. Yeah, so it goes faster through the air and stuff. So if you're a fast swinger, like you can really generate.
No. It's a great racket. I tried it. It's fantastic. The 98 is fantastic. And so is actually the Pure Drive 98.
Yeah, I like that too. Yeah.
That one's amazing too.
They're very good. Very good. It's tough to make a choice between those actually because it's two great rackets, you know.
Yeah, like a lot of people that find the Pure Drive a little too wild. Like the 98 Pure Drive, like that one is just right. I don't know if you know Emma Burgage from my channel. Yep. She had switched to the Technifiber first played with the
TFX1, right?
TFX1, and then she switched to the T Fight, and then she went back to the old trusted pure drive that she used her whole life pretty much.
But the 100, right?
But she tried the 100, and she thought that she was spraying a little bit with it, and so she went to the 98. So she plays with the pure drive 98 now.
The new one or the older one?
The new one.
Yeah, it's great.
The 2024.
It's a bit better for the arm, that one, there as well. They have flax fibers in it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The 2021 is not the most arm friendly. Like I have tried it with futures guys, and they feel a difference, right? Like that the arm is a little bit on the 2021 one, but on the 2025, then the one that came early this year, that they don't have no issues with. And I know
21.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
And like I have, I think, 2 friends that are like playing futures or have played futures that have switched from Aero 98 to Pure Drive 98 just because a little bit more confidence on when they flatten out the ball. Like the pure Aero 98, you need to rip always. Like the Aero 98 is a rip racket. Like it has a high launch angle. You need to go for your shots. The Drive 98 allows a little bit more room for maneuvering or being you don't have to rip as much, you know, so you can be a little bit more.
Well, yeah, it's that in the throat design, right?
Yeah.
Like, so if you have more of the flatter stroke, that throat design is not really there to help you. That throat design where it's like super edgy and arrow is in the name, right? If you go vertical on the ball, then the arrow is going to help you.
Yeah.
So for me, I wanted to play with the arrows so bad. I've had all of them. And back then they used to have, that's why I brought it up before. Like back then they used to have, they don't have it anymore, but they used to have the Aero Tour and the Pure Drive Tour. They got rid of them, right?
Since 2015, I think, yeah.
Since 2015. So I tried all of them. And even though there used to be a Pure Aero Plus, I don't know if they still have that. So I've had like...
Yeah, they still have in the new one, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I had all of them. My daughter, when she used to play tennis, she used the Aero. And even in some of my videos, like early in intuitive tennis days, like 2018, 2019, I used the Aero. And it was like my dream racket to play with. I love it. But, you know, going back to like how that racket can help you, because my strokes, especially my forehand, tend to be a little bit more flat, what ends up happening is that I actually spray more balls with the Aero compared to the Pure Drive. So I get more control with the Pure Drive compared to the Aero because I don't play with that much spin. And the Pure Drive is definitely for consistency better. And that's because of the throat design. And if I had more spin, then the Aero would help me, but I simply don't, you know? So for that reason, even though I wanted to really badly, I just couldn't play with the Aero, unfortunately.
It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. Yeah, you have to have a certain stroke to work with arrows. It's just, you exactly like you point out.
Yeah. I mean, nowadays most of like pretty much everyone plays with topspin. My strokes are like, especially my forehand, it's like a little bit more from like the 90s era. You don't really see a forehand like mine that much nowadays. Like, so I'm tad unique in that regard, but it's not to say that you can't play like a topspin game with the Pure Drive. No. It's not like a racket that's just designed for flat. You can have a tremendous amount of spin with the Pure Drive, right? So that's...
Pericard plays Pure Drive. He plays with a massive spin, right?
Just think of Roddick, Moya. Are you kidding me? Like, they have heavy forehands. Or even Nadal's doubles partner. What's his name?
Mark Lopez, or no?
Not Mark. Yeah, Mark Lopez. Yeah. He played with Pure Drive, no?
Yeah.
So it's like that's a spin racket too, you know? Not quite as good as the Aero, but still... Pure Drive, you can play the modern game, no problem at all. It's not like just for flat shots, you know.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting how the tour moves, you know. But there are not that many 100 square inch. I got that question the other day. You know, Pericard, you know, Fognini, they played Pure Drive 100, for example. There are this Cazot guy, the French guy, who's very big power game. There are a bunch of them. The Dutch Botik van de Zandschulp plays Pure Aero 100, so he's also 100. But it's relatively rare. Like, Moutet plays the TFX1, it's 101, you know, but he is also quite a specific player. But overall, it's 98 on the ATP. While on the WTA, you see 100 as the main head size, you know, for most players.
Well, you know, Jonas, like this is going back to our private conversation, which our private conversations are so good. We should record them and post them.
Yeah, it was. This is what this
But
is
anyway,
pretty much.
yeah, that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah.
But anyway, you know, again, I'm gonna go back to like some of the criticism that I've received on the internet when I made it, you know, racket videos, and I've been misunderstood and misinterpreted because I'm not saying that stiff rackets are better for your arm, okay? I'm saying that responsive rackets are better for your arm, and stiffness makes the racket more responsive, okay? So I'm also of the belief that certain body types and certain type of players will gravitate more towards responsive rackets. And it was always a huge mystery to me that the most commonly seen racket on the WTA Tour was a Wilson blade. And it made absolutely no sense from my understanding of rackets, what I just said. Because generally, females play with more responsive rackets because of, you know, their athleticism is different from male athleticism. They're going to need a little bit more help from the racket to make a similar amount of power as the men, right? So this was always like something that made absolutely no sense. Why women would gravitate towards a Wilson blade? It made no sense because that's a, I wouldn't call it a super low power racket, but not that responsive, right?
No.
Kind of
So
like
kind of low power these days for sure. Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of low power, right? It's got a kind of a classic beam. It's not a power racket, and it's not going to help you that much. Like Tsitsipas said, you got to really do the work to make power with that racket. So I look on WTA Tour and like that must be the #1 racket they use, right? And so I asked the GOAT of tennis rackets, Jonas, and you told me that it's actually a Steam,
Yep.
Wilson Steam, and that kind of like inspired this long conversation about the Steam. It's a racket that I loved back in the day. I had one junior that was really good. There was a girl nationally ranked that played with the Steam. And I remember they had different like string patterns. There was even a S version, like a Steam S, remember?
Yep.
The
15,
Steam
16
was,
or something like that. Yeah.
and the Steam was just one of those like super responsive rackets that was like you could get so much power with that thing. So to me, it was always a mystery why Wilson discontinued that because it was kind of like a Wilson Pure Drive, right? Like a kind of a Wilson version of the Pure Drive, because they had back then the Juice, which was kind of like a copy of the Arrow, right?
Yeah.
So you know what you told me is like they got rid of it because of the name, maybe like the Steam was a little bit too steamy of a name.
Yeah, I think there was when I talked to the Wilson guys about it, like there were some change in management which happens, and they
Yeah.
said, you know, someone didn't want that line due to something. Maybe it was the name. I think I heard something about the name,
Yeah.
you know. But the racket is still going very, very strong. I mean, like Deminor plays
Yes.
Steam 99.
Okay,
So
list
many.
them off, be honest. Come on, list them off. Who plays with this? With
Oh yeah.
with the
I
Steam,
might not be all from memory, but on the men's tour there's a bunch of guys, but like Deminor is the most famous one. But on the WTA is where it's the most popular because like Steam 99 is used also on the women's tour. Was used by Svitolina, for example. But the 100 one
Raducanu.
Raducanu, Badosa, Ostapenko, Diane Parry,
Keep going.
Anisimova.
Keep
Who
going.
else? Let's see if I can come up
Jonas,
with more.
come on, keep going. Keep rattling them off.
You have to give me some. Not
It's everyone.
It's everyone.
Not Sabalenka.
Not
Is like
Sabalenka.
the only one.
That was my point. Like because she has the power to play with a
She's
proper blade.
Yeah,
But
but like the
the
vast
only one.
majority of, let's just make a statement. The vast majority of females that you see on tour that have a blade, it's actually a Steam.
Yeah.
Would that be a correct
100% correct statement. You know,
Okay,
and then
yeah,
there are other like 100 range molds. There are like H25. Like there are molds more like on the ultra line, but
right.
very few women play with the 98. It's Arena, and I don't know anyone else. And like Ons Jabeur uses a Pro Staff 97, so she plays with a low-powered racket as well. But overall, they all use like 100 range, pretty much. Like
and that makes sense. When you look at Ons Jabeur and you look at Sabalenka, it makes sense why they would play with a low-power racket. So my point is, and I'm going deep with this, okay?
Yeah.
Because again, in my experience as somebody that has been in the tennis teaching professionals whole life that had a dad who ran a club and we strung rackets, and I was a stringer for many, many years. My belief is that most players, not all, but most players will benefit from a responsive racket. So it makes no sense to me that you endorse the blade so much on the women's tour and make such a confusing thing for the audience who is going to go on Tennis Warehouse or whatever or Wilson.com and is gonna buy the blade because Svitolina plays with it. Like, so it's a confusing thing. It makes no sense that you promote a racket that's not going to be that great of a racket for the vast majority of players. Now, for anyone listening that uses the blade, that might be the perfect racket for you. I'm not generalizing. There are going to be players who are going to benefit from playing with a lower powered racket, no doubt about it. But just from my experience, most players are going to benefit when the racket does a little bit of the work for you. So this is one of the most confusing things that I've ever seen. The fact that even though they're playing with the Steam, which is like a pure drive racket, super high power, stiff racket, responsive, it's painted like a blade. But then when you look, zoom in, you see that on the throat, the gap, it doesn't really look like a blade. So I've known this for a long time. But Halep used the Steam, right?
Yep.
Or no?
99.
Yeah, Steam 99. So that's my point. It makes no
And
sense.
Andreeva, sorry, the 100 as well. I forgot.
Andreeva used the Steam too, right?
Yeah.
All right. So this makes no sense to me. Why do you confuse us, the normal people that are buying rackets, and possibly not only like confusing us, but maybe we're going to buy the wrong racket, one that's not going to benefit us so much. That's the one thing that's very confusing to me. It makes no sense. Like, first of all, why get rid of such a great racket, one of the all-time great rackets from Wilson, the Steam? Maybe rename it or whatever. But also to push the blade so much. But for me, I never understood it because I'm a type of guy that likes a responsive racket, and I could never play with the blade, like never. That was never something I could do. So again, like, confusing thing, Jonas. I don't want to put you into any type of danger. I don't know if you're affiliated with like any of these companies, but I just wanted to say this because it's just so confusing. It makes no sense to me.
No, I'm not affiliated, and I also,
Oh, okay.
I talked to Wilson in French Open, and we discussed this with one of the guys there a little bit, the issues they have, like, and with this situation, like, because on the men's tour there are many blades, and they are not lying, like they are blades, right? And that makes a lot of sense. There are a bunch of blade pros on the ATP tour, but on the women's tour, they need to bring back either the Steam under a different name, which they will do later this year, but that's another one thing.
Oh yeah,
yeah, but only the 99. But more about that to come. So it will be big. We'll be back in business.
That's huge. Okay, great. All right,
so
I take everything back.
No. So in my opinion, that's great. We did make a video calling that we want the Steam back about 2 years ago, but that was another story.
You did? Okay.
Yeah. So then to bring that back is great, but also then push their power line, like the Ultra, and like, because for WTA players, women player pros, it's like they should play with Arrows, V-Cores, Pure Drives, E-Zones, and Ultras, like this kind of racket. Like it, for 99%, it makes no sense to go with a Blade 98 or a Radical or anything like that. Like, it's a control racket. They play, like, also women usually play a little bit more flat, but they hit really hard, and they will get more flat power with these rackets, so they will be more dangerous. And I just think I agree with you 100% that it's better that they endorse a racket that if a player goes to a store and says, hey, I would like a powerful racket like my favorite player uses, Tomjanovic or whatever,
Or how about female juniors? You know how many female juniors I see down here playing with the wrong rackets?
I know.
With,
I have made.
They play with rackets that a female would never play with. The juniors, like the 11 and 12-year-olds, are playing with that. Maybe because they see Halep playing with the blade, and she's not playing with blade. So that's my whole point with this. It's like the wrong signal. And going back to like my most controversial statement, stiff rackets are better for the arm. It fits into this category where I'm talking about not stiff rackets necessarily, because a stiff racket can be horrible for your arm if you play with the old Babolat Pure Drive Tour, the erotic racket that's going to destroy your arm. I'm talking about responsive rackets. And for, again, I don't want to be repetitive, but for most players, they're going to get a lot of help from a responsive rackets. Of course, not all. I know there's a lot of guys here in the comments that play with the RF 97 and all that, and these guys are perfectly suited to use that racket. And I've seen it. I'm not being like facetious. I have students of mine that play with heavy rackets and they play just fine. So there's going to be some outliers, no doubt about it. But yeah, it's one of those things, you know. I'm glad we talked about it.
No, and I wanted to also add, like, so, like, if you play with a stiff racket, like the Pure Drive 100, for example, the new one has great dampening, so like they will handle the vibrations for you. Also, the string comes into play. So if you put in whatever racket you put RPM blast at 28 kilos or 56 pounds or whatever you want to do, then you're going to have arm issues. Doesn't matter if you put that string in a Prestige, doesn't matter if you put it or like Olu Power, which a lot of, like, I have so many consultations with amateurs, like, oh, I play Olu Power in a Pro Staff 97 at 56 pounds. I'm like, yeah, no worries, you have shoulder issues or arm pain or whatever. So, and I also want to add one more thing, and that's responsiveness is a good word, because you can have a flexible and responsive racket, and there are a few options. So you have like the Clash, which is like a trampoline. So the trampoline is being responsive. It's like ball goes in, since the racket is super like stable in the twist weight, the ball just shoots off like a trampoline. So a slingshot, right? You have that from Prokenix as well. I'm testing now the Black Ace, which is their Clash kind of racket. And so you can have that as well, but the string is sometimes the culprit. Like, I think people get it confused, and like you use the wrong string and the wrong tension.
So Jonas, like, I made a video talking about exactly this, like what makes a racket more responsive. There's many different things. It's not just the stiffness. That's just one part of it, but it's also the beam width, right? Yep. So if it's a thicker beam, it's going to be more responsive, and so on, the spring pattern and all that. Racket head size, right? So yeah, you can absolutely have a more flexible racket that's also responsive, no doubt about it. So if you look at the Steam, it's got a wider beam, it's got, it's got other, factors that make it responsive, no doubt about it. But I've made so many videos, Jonas, like probably 10 videos, just telling people to string in the 40s. And it's just so amazing to me that when I get a student, they get their racket strung, and I just go like this, I test it, and it's just like a board, it's like I could never play with it. It's a straight board. So, still to this day, the confusing thing for everyone is that what'll happen if you buy the racket and I don't know if they offer that, but let's say you want to get it strung by them when they ship it to you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you would request tension of 48 on a Babolat, for example, and I'm not 100% sure what's stamped on the racket, but if it's not within the zone that's recommended, it'll automatically void the order.
Oh, yeah?
And they won't ship it to you. Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah. You have to select the tension range that's recommended. And still to this day, the recommendations for the tension range on the racket are 100%
too high.
They're for different strengths than what everybody uses. They're for synthetic gut and for natural gut and for multi-filament. Which is fine to string it between 50 and 60 or whatever it is, or whatever is stamped on the racket, okay? 45 to 55. I'm not sure every racket's going to be different, but most people nowadays play with either co-poly or poly or whatever. And the kiss of death and the absolute number one problem for your arm is going to the pro shop and getting a poly string on there and stringing it at 55 just because Sinner strings at 55, whatever. I don't even know what Singer strings at, but
yeah, much higher actually.
So 58?
Strings like 60, 62 sometimes.
Okay, so some people string that, right? And so let's say that they go to a pro shop and they, let's say, take a very responsive racket, and they string it at 55 with poly string. It doesn't really matter so much which string it is. So what'll happen is that a lot of these string machines are not calibrated correctly. So the pull speed is like is not right. So it'll actually overstretch the strings and make it even tighter than it normally should be. So you get back this board, and a string like that, a polyester string strung at this tension that's probably overstretched already on the machine and deadened on the machine, is going to feel like playing with a frying pan, and it's going to absolutely destroy your arm. So all this stuff that we were talking about before, throw it out the window. When you use the recommendations that are stamped on your racket and you get it strung with poly strings, you're going to get a frying pan back that's going to absolutely kill your arm. So that's why I've been saying, like, I've been preaching this for like 7 years. String in the 40s, like string maybe even in the 30s. They have to be a little bit careful because some strings don't really perform that well in the 30s, but you string in the 40s. You don't care if the stringer tells you that that's stupid to do, because that's what a lot of stringers will tell people, like that's way too low.
Yeah.
I hear this from everyone. Like, so you just string it 42, 43, and if you want to play with poly, and my recommendation is that people play with poly, with the right type of poly. So that's the most important thing, is the tension. You got to go as low as you possibly can, or your arm is going to be in a lot of trouble.
I agree. I think it's, I've been harping about it for ages as well. And there are pros obviously playing like 36, 40. Guys with blades like Sonigo playing 44 pounds, 20 kilos, sometimes lower than that. Most pros have gone down. Zverev has gone down quite a bit. Now he's up again, but he went down a bit. So I think you might take some getting used to, so you can do it gradually, like especially if you can string a little bit more often than many do. But if you're stringing it once, be safe, be kind to your arm. I think it's because you will adjust. Like you can adjust to it. Some players they hit two shots, they're like, I can't play with this, but they can adjust, of course, if they give it time.
What do you use as strings?
Now I'm looking for a string for tension.
Tension.
My starting point is 50 pounds, right? So I start there with a racket, and then I see, do I need to go up, which is rare, or do I need to go down? So if I test strings and rackets, usually like I test rackets with my known strings, so I know what the string does and what the racket does. Yeah. It's obvious for testing. But then like I have 50 as a reference point. That's also gone down. I used to maybe string 51, 53 or something like that. But I like 50. I sometimes like to also do 49, 47, 51, 49, something like that, like stringing the crosses 1 pound, 2 pounds lower. So that's the starting point. But like I played now 2 days against good players with one guy with points, and we played 2.5 hours in heat yesterday. And with heavy conditions, with very humid, you're getting nothing. Like even with 50 pounds, like in the Aero, for example, 98, like I'm not good enough to generate against that kind of guy, So the ball's super heavy. We're both trying to, just like play long rallies. So now I'm looking to go down even in the Aeros, right? So
I'm between 44 and 46.
That's good. That's good.
On the Kirschbaum orange.
It's a good range.
It depends a little bit.
Kirschbaum's pretty dead string as well. Like, so it's actually quite good to go low on that one.
Say again?
It's a pretty dead string in a way, so it's pretty good to go low. Like, it's not super soft, that string, right?
I mean, like, I do find that string to be responsive,
Yeah, responsive, but it's like still controlled, right? Like, that's what I mean. Yeah.
It's controlled. I think it's a good mix. So if I like need a little bit more control, I'll go 46. I like to have a couple of different tensions on the rackets.
Yeah, that's important, I think.
But for me that's a good range, 44 to 46. But again, like, I'm very scared from a lot of people how tight their rackets are. I'm very scared. It's like I just got my racket strung, and he's got one of these banjos around the elbow, and I'm like, oh, I super arm friendly string, and then like I go like this, and it's like a frying pan. I'm like, man, I don't know what's going on. And he's like, I strung it at 40, 47 or something, and it just feels a lot tighter to me than it. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's the calibration of these machines. I don't know, but my experience, generally speaking, is players' strings at the rack level are way too tight.
I think there's an interesting thing. Maybe we have to end on this note because I have a meeting. But
no problem.
A counterintuitive thing I talked about in some of my recent videos is that recreational players, they want control because they cannot generate topspin, and topspin is a way to control the ball, right? So that becomes an issue because then they think, Oh, but I cannot put the ball within the lines with unless I have an 18-20. I'm being extreme now. An 18-20 like with all the power at 53 pounds. And that's the issue, because then in their head, okay, if I hit, they don't hit maybe with enough spin, they don't hit like with enough like elbow in their take back and stuff like that. So that's sometimes the counterintuitive part, because you want to say, hey, play with an aero 100 and string 48 pounds, let's say. I'm just giving you an example. But then, all right, but then the ball just flies. And then you have that like counterintuitive thing that a pro would be able to control that, but a club player will struggle. And maybe it will take some time to get used to it, but that's sometimes the conundrum, I think.
So my experience has been that when players at the rec level have technical issues, so let's say there are technical issues on whichever stroke, if they get a racket that's like low powered, they're going to have to swing that racket faster to make power. When you string a racket faster, not only is it harder to learn a new technique, but also more mistakes will show up when you swing faster. So when you have a racket that's more high powered, you don't have to swing like a lunatic. And it's not only going to be easier to correct technical deficiencies, but it's also going to provide more consistency to the swing itself. This is like a general statement because of course, many different levels of players and all that, but that's been my experience throughout all these years, that when, somebody plays with a racket that's like, that gives them nothing, their technique gets even worse, and it's even more difficult to make corrections.
I think that's a great point. I think when you have to swing like a wild man or wild woman, like you really need to like almost muscle the ball, and because your technique is not great, maybe you're using the body, maybe you're over rotating. Like a lot of issues stem from that instead of like using the kinetic chain. Because I think like what I see a lot as well, and like it's that people they swing faster than they have to. Like it's an over thing, Also juniors, like I play some ITF juniors who compete on the ITF juniors circuit, and they should spank me, quite easily. But they watch highlights tennis and they want to swing for the fences, and there's a lot of things that go wrong. Then like balls sail out and they make stupid mistakes. Where like if you can contain your power and use that to build instead, it's a better way to improve, right?
I mean, like I said, I'm making a general statement, and there's many different levels of players, and what I said is a little bit more applicable to the lower levels. As we get to the higher levels, whether it's recreational or when you're talking about high level juniors, it gets a little bit more complex there regarding rackets. And what you're saying is like the effect that highlights have on junior players. I think that's like doesn't have to do so much with equipment, but that's been quite an interesting thing to watch in the last maybe, I don't know, 5 to 10 years. That like I do think there's a lot of influence there, the highlights and how tennis is played. Like I do think that since the arrival of Alcaraz, like the amount of drop shots that you see like from juniors has gone way up. I do believe that.
Yeah,
I do believe that, and maybe like some low percentage shots and stuff like that. So unfortunately, those people that are influenced by that, you'll never see them like playing the junior Roland Garros final, because I don't think that's a way to develop your game properly. So I don't really see it at the elite junior level, that type of thing, but like just the regular juniors that you see around at clubs, you see some knucklehead moves. Like you see some really like what are you doing out there? Like you're not Alcaraz, just play normal high percentage tennis. So I do think that there's a big influence from social media on the youngsters, no doubt about it.
I find that I've faced that quite a lot. It's not related to rackets. I agree with you in that case, but it's related to what you watch. And I, when I play like ITF seniors, I can sometimes, this is also like not maybe related to highlights, but it's like you're a Federer fanboy. You're a Rafa fanboy, like guys who run around on the back and they scream "Vamos" after it. I mean, I'm in Spain, so obviously that's a Rafa fanboy. But then I play some German guys. They come with the RF97, which is too heavy, and they want to smoke every ball. And then you tend to like, okay, I'm gonna push it back and let them hit out. So that becomes your strategy. But a lot of players are very much formed, and it would be interesting to see Alcaraz effect you're already seeing. Will Sinner have effect? Because Sinner is a little bit more of a Djokovic style player, like all court or
I
like
don't think so.
that's
I don't think so.
yeah,
I
it's
don't
not as
think
easy
so.
to identify with Yannick than Alcaraz. Yeah.
The most copied strokes in the history of tennis will always be the Roger Federer strokes,
Yeah, yeah, of course.
more specifically the forehand, the Roger Federer forehand. And I don't think anybody's trying to copy Novak, because I don't think his strokes are as aesthetic as Rogers. But when it comes to Carlos, I think Carlos is more in the Federer category. Like people, he's very aesthetically pleasing to look at, Carlos Alcaraz strokes. But I want to go back to what I said about like the youngsters, hitting drop shots like Alcaraz. So I want to clarify that I think it's fantastic that kids are inspired by Alcaraz to play tennis and be like Alcaraz. I think that's phenomenal. So hopefully a coach can step in and say, hey, maybe like let's develop your feel first, and do drop shot training before you start doing a lot of drop shots in matches. That's a different story. But the fact that Alcaraz and maybe Sinner too are inspiring all these kids to go out and play. And I made a short video after the final where, I'm working with a new ball machine company, and I wanted to try this new ball machine. And I watched Alcaraz so much these 2 weeks. I swear, I started doing like the drop shots. I'm like, and it was like kind of like I didn't even think about it, but I'm like, yeah, like I've been watching so much Alcaraz this clay court season. I'm out there practicing my forehand drop shot, and I never hit forehand drop shots. So it is inspirational. It is fantastic that these great players that we have at the top of the game are motivating youngsters and even old timers like me to go out there on the court and play tennis. That's the great thing about it. So I just wanted to clarify that, because yeah, highlights can have a negative effect and all that, but I think social media also can inspire somebody to go out there and play tennis. And I'm all about people going out and hitting tennis balls.
Same. Like I always think big picture. As since like I mean I have a strong love for tennis, as I know you have, and
Yeah.
it's always like what is good for the game. And these kind of matches, like on Sunday, it's the best marketing for the game. And these kind of athletes that we have on the in them now, like taking over the three goats and so on. Like, it's
Incredible.
just fantastic. We're so lucky and blessed to have these
Correct.
two after those three guys. So very very nice.
Absolutely.
Cool, man. All right, I'm gonna have to cut you loose. We can probably talk for six
No
more
problem.
hours, but
No problem,
I
Jonas.
have another tennis meeting, not a podcast. But
Thank you so much for having me on, and it was definitely fun again. And I hope I didn't put you in any trouble with some of the stuff I said about the
there could be no trouble.
the
It's completely
listening.
unfiltered here on Tennis Nerd Podcast.
All right, man. It was nice to be on again.
Thanks. We'll have you again soon.
All right, take care. Bye bye.